Welcome to the John and Heidi Show podcast.
John and Heidi.
Here's John and Heidi.
Today is a special day, Heidi. Do you know what today is?
What is today, John?
I thought you'd never ask. It's Wednesday, April the 24th. Today is National Pigs in a Blanket Day.
You love that.
You know the weird thing? I had never had those until you and I got married. How crazy is that?
I know.
Apparently,
Because I am on the cutting edge of culinary technology.
Yeah, I was raised in a very...
You were raised in a barn.
Apparently, and just a sad childhood with no pigs and no blankets. It's also National Administrative Professionals Day today, so all of those things going on. And I've got a guest joining me. He is the original voice of the song Eye of the Tiger. I'm super excited to visit
that song.
with Dave Bickler. Super duper nice dude. We scheduled this interview, and then he actually became my friend on Facebook. We've been chatting back and forth.
Isn't that great?
Nice guy. Super nice guy. So very excited to visit with Mr. Dave Bickler on today's program. Thanks for listening to the John and Heidi Show.
The inventor of Rip It gloves has been a drywall guy for decades. He was trying to find gloves that worked for him and his crew, but nothing was quite right. So he went out and created some. Rip It gloves fit firm in your hand and protect your hands, but still allow you to use a touchscreen. Professional athletes love the extra grip Rip It gloves gives them. Painters, roofers, contractors, but also motorcycle and horseback riders. See why everyone loves Rip It gloves at ripitgloves.com. Use promo code radio to save 25%. That's RIPIT gloves.com, promo code radio.
Now, surveys and studies and such, brought to you by BetterCreditCards.net. A study out of Finland found that eating a diet rich in red meat will lead to an earlier death. At this rate, I may be dead by the end of this program. I do eat a lot of red meat. That's kind of sad.
You know
kind of
what?
Sad. You disagree with the Finnish study?
I would... No, I don't disagree, because I have been to Finland, and everybody there is...
Fit as a fiddle?
Very fit.
So apparently,
and they all look very young.
So apparently they don't eat much red meat. But I just don't think I'm willing
to give up red meat. I mean, why live longer if it's going to feel like you're living way,
I was going to say, the study says
you don't get to have red meat.
By not eating red meat, you could live longer, or it'll just feel that way.
Yeah, that's just it.
See, I'm just being silly. Thanks for listening to Surveys and Studies and such, brought to you by BetterCreditCards.net. Credit cards, they can be trouble. About 12 years ago, we did a debt snowball program and got rid of our credit cards. We were debt-free except for our house. It was awesome. But over the course of the next decade, our credit score went down. That sounds weird, but they need open accounts to give you a score. Our lower score made our insurance rates go up. We decided to get a credit card to help with that. We just pay it off every month. If you want a better credit card, check out BetterCreditCards.net. They'll help you compare all the different cards to get the best one for you. That's BetterCreditCards.net. And this is Your Brain on Drugs, brought to you by TimeForRehab.com. A woman who was recently indicted in a Nashville murder case is facing additional charges after allegedly walking into an area Waffle House naked while waving a gun in the air.
Yikes.
Officials with Metro Nashville Police say 19-year-old Montessa Tate Thornton was arrested early last Saturday morning. This is probably a few weeks ago. These stories, by the time I finally get to them, they're pretty old because there's so many of them. It says here there was a disturbance at the Waffle House. 34-year-old Larcino Nixon allegedly ran into the restaurant nude. Police said officers found Tate Thornton inside waving a gun in the air, speaking incoherently. Both were taken into custody. She was charged with possession of a handgun while under the influence. Nixon was charged with felony in possession of a handgun while under the influence, public indecency, and public intoxication. Says they were... this Thornton young lady was just named in a grand jury indictment in connection to a shooting death of a 23-year-old. So, yeah, you girls might need a different hobby. It's a bad plan. Thanks for listening to the John and Heidi Show. Now, big screen, little screen, brought to you by ChannelSurferTV.com. Anne Hathaway says she's giving up drinking until her son is out of the house. Not because she has a drinking problem, Heidi, but because she has a, quote, hangover problem. The actress says when she drinks, she goes too hard, and then one morning she was too hungover to take her son to school, and that's when she said, I had a 5-day hangover. So she's given up drinking until her son...
A 5-day hangover? Yeah, then that does mean she has a drinking problem.
No, she's got a hangover problem, is what she says.
Yeah, sure.
That's called denial, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Britney Spears' mother, Lynn Spears, has been liking some strange things on the internet, and it may give an indication that Britney is in a mental institution against her will, according to this story. The pop star has been in a facility since January, and her father, Jamie, is her guardian, supervising the stay. So... I don't know. Interesting stuff going on there. Keep that young lady in your prayers. Britney Spears, I've always thought it was amazing how talented she is, but then like she'll go off the deep end. A couple of different times she's done that where you're like, what are you doing? So
You know what,
I hope
though?
everything's okay.
You have to think about...
Oh, all the pressure's on those people?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
from the
can
time
only
she was just
imagine.
a small kid, that's just not right.
No,
that's not fair.
That's tough stuff. Coming up, we've got your scoop of the day. That is on the way.
Join us for a fun week in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic for the 3rd annual 80s in the Sand. We've been there the last 2 years, in addition to making a bunch of awesome new friends. We had so much fun meeting 80s actors and musicians. 80s in the Sand takes over the entire resort, so you'll mingle with them at the pools and the restaurants too. We'd love to have you join us. See the amazing lineup featuring Sammy Hagar and many more at radiotravelgroup.com. Save $200 per person for first-time guests at radiotravelgroup.com.
Now, your scoop of the day brought to you by BetterCreditCards.net. Authorities are trying to determine the identity of a fireball that streaked across the sky of Washington, D.C. last Tuesday. So it's been a little over a week ago now. And they still are trying to figure out what in the world that was.
They want the identity of it?
They're trying to figure out what it was.
Okay.
What was that streak of
It
light
was a
that...
fireball.
Okay, but what was it? Was it a meteor? Was it like a burning plane? I've got a link to the story if you want to read all the details. There's probably a lot of people that have all the details because, again, I got this story. Some of the stories that I have today, I just don't have enough room to squeeze it all in because we get too chatty. And I'm like, well, I don't want to just dump it. So I'm going to get back on topic so we don't miss even more. A 68 million year old skeleton of a baby T-Rex is selling for $2.9 million on eBay. Even if I had $2.9 million, I probably wouldn't buy a skeleton of a T-Rex. Would you? What would you do with
where
that?
Would you? Yeah, exactly. Where would you put this thing?
Do you think it comes...
Shouldn't it just be... Okay, so I get even museums should have to pay for the things that are
that's
in the
cool.
museum. So maybe it's a museum that's
That
buying
could be.
this.
I wonder if it comes assembled or if it's going to show up like IKEA with instructions.
Yeah.
This vertebrae connects to... No?
1A-4.
There's no stickers on this thing. Florida man was arrested for stealing spaghetti and shoving it into his mouth with his bare hands at an Olive Garden restaurant. That's real classy. NYPD is looking for a man who groped a dozen women on the subway. That's real classy. Yuma, Arizona has declared a state of emergency because of the flood of immigrants entering their city. So Yuma, Arizona is saying, hey, we need some help.
Yeah.
And then the clothing line Massimo, you've heard of that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that's Lori Laughlin's husband.
Yes.
His name is Massam Gayanuli. I probably said that wrong. I apologize. I don't know him. We're not on a first-name basis. But he admitted that he lied about attending USC in the 1980s, and he took the money his parents gave him and put it in his pocket instead.
Oh.
So they gave him money back in the 80s to go
for
to school.
college.
So he had his own little college scandal back then. His parents gave him money to go to school, and he's like, thank you.
He probably should have just kept his mouth shut about that
I don't know.
in amidst all of this.
I just think that's really crazy. And then now
Wow.
he paid the school plenty of money trying to get his daughters in there. So that's just a weird... That whole thing seems like Bizarro World to me.
Yeah.
Time magazine has sparked outrage for their list of their 100 most influential people for 2018. And a couple of the names that are making people really upset are Brett Kavanaugh and Christy Blasey Ford. So we don't get into politics here, but those were two people that were in the news a lot last year. I understand why. They're talking about the most influential people of 2018. Why would they not be on the list? But there are people that are just going like all bonkers over the fact that those two names are on that list. So if you want to read the story, I've got a link to it. You can read all about it and, you decide. A really interesting video has gone viral of two firefighters rescuing a deer from a frozen lake in Colorado. It's really cool to watch that. Mm-hmm. They go out and they save this deer, and you just sit there.
It's really neat.
And the deer, can you imagine how confused that deer would be?
Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, it would have to be very confused.
That's something I very rarely watch videos that I think are going to make me all sappy. But if it involves an animal, I almost always stop.
I know. You do.
And I watch them. The dog rescues and all that. I always watch those things.
Those are cool.
They are.
Beyonce said she gave up sugar and carbs and meat before her performance at Coachella. So she was trying to, make herself look as good as possible. I'm also giving up carbs and sugar and meat before my performance at Coachella. Good news is I'm not performing at Coachella. So, and one final story. A new report shows that 60 companies, 60, paid $0 in taxes despite earning over $79 billion as a company. Something that Heidi and I were talking about. And you made a very good point because she was saying the people that work there, the shareholders, are the ones that made the money, and they did pay taxes.
Right.
So it's not the company.
Companies do not pay taxes.
Well, they do, but it's different. So they don't pay. It's done in a different way.
Right.
I've got a link to the story if you want to read all about it. If you want to chat with Heidi about it, I'm not going to let her do that here. Everybody will get in trouble. Thanks for listening to the John and Heidi Show.
Do you have a credit card? Is it the very best credit card? Many people get their credit card as a response to an offer that was mailed to you. These are typically not the best cards. Check the fine print for the fees and interest. We have a website that compares many different cards being offered so you can find the one that's the best fit for you. If you'd like to find a better credit card, we'd love to help at bettercreditcards.net. There's no obligation. Just click and compare to see if we can get you a better credit card at bettercreditcards.net.
Thank you so much for listening to the John and Heidi Show. We have Dave Bickler joining us right now, and this is really exciting because I can tell you, Dave, growing up, one of the songs that you had a chance to be the lead singer on was one of my favorite songs growing up, and it was featured on a soundtrack for Rocky. Was it Rocky 2? Is that right?
No, it was Rocky 3.
Rocky 3. See, they had so many Rockies, but your song is the one that is like synonymous with Rocky, isn't it?
It pretty much is. It was amazing because it just became sort of an iconic thing, and it was the greatest promotional tool of all time to be, in front of Rocky 3, the opening scene of the movie. So that was like the best radio promotion thing, ever, I think.
And the song is called Eye of the Tiger. Now, was that actually created for the movie, or did they just say, hey, we like that, we're going to put it in the movie?
No, it actually was created for the movie. What happened was we were on Scotti Brothers Records, which is distributed by Epic, and Tony Scotti, the president of the company, was friends with Sylvester Stallone. He was Tony Scotti. He was an actor. Was in the business, and Sylvester Stallone and they had known each other for quite a while, as my understanding. He was looking for something for that opening sequence in the movie, and Tony played him our second record that we put out, a Premonition album. He liked the band, so he said, "Yes, guys can write me a song that'll go with." He provided some rough cuts of film, and the guys, Frankie and Jim, wrote the song. We got right into the studio, and I learned it, in the studio. I had never heard it before, and we cut it in a day. That track that we cut in the studio that day was the one that actually ended up being used in the movie.
Oh, wow.
And then we later went out to California to record an album and to go along with that, and there's that track is the one we'll hear in the radio.
That's really, really cool. Now, there's a distinction that you have that not everybody can get to say, but you have this distinction of having this major song that you produced, and it was in a movie and all those cool things, but it was also parodied by Weird Al. Now, what is it like when you hear I think his was called Ryer and the Kaiser, maybe, instead of Eye of the Tiger? What was it like to hear that and go, wait a minute?
I loved that. It's awesome. It's an honor to be roasted by, you know what I mean? It is. Madonna, you name it. He did some fantastic parodies.
And I think that's maybe one of those things where you made it when Weird Al is, kind of poking fun at you a little bit.
Absolutely. I thought it was really hilarious.
Now, the thing that's really cool is you're not done with music. You're still producing music. Again, our guest, Dave Bickler. Now, you've got a solo album that you're putting together, or did you just finished it, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah. It just came out in March 15th, and called Dark Light. It was a lot of fun to make that record. I'm very happy with it. I'm happy the way it turned out. I found some really great people to work with to make it, and I'm thrilled that it's come out. And
as I was getting ready for the interview, I watched a video online where you were kind of talking about where you found your drummer and where you found the bass player and where you found the guitar player and all of the different people that kind of came together. I thought that in itself was a pretty darn cool story.
It was kind of interesting, and I was faced with the prospect, to get serious about it, to make I wanted to get, first thing you need is for a rock and roll band is a drummer, and I didn't have a band, so I just was going to find a drummer. And my friend, I said in the interview, my friend Jeremy Holiday at Sony mentioned Ryan Hoyle, the drummer from Collective Soul, who has a studio out in California that he cuts drum tracks for, he'll do them for you, custom drum tracks. And he's got this beautiful facility, and I looked it up, and I heard his playing, and of course his reputation, speaks for itself. And I knew that he was the guy. I mean, I just could tell by listening to his playing that he would be the right guy. So I went out there with him. We just had a ball, and I learned so much about drums as well in the process, because I'm a total geek about that stuff, and showed me how you the care and feeding of drums and how you set that set up and how you record them. Because drums are very difficult to record. It's an acoustic instrument and requires a lot of stuff, a lot of mics, a lot of preamps, a lot of all that. So it was really fun. And then I added to that was Brad Smith, from Blind Melon, who was hanging about kind of. He's out there, and they were friends. He hit the studio as well, so he ended up playing bass on the tracks, and that was fantastic. So, and then I ended up at Sound Spa here down in New Jersey. I found Stephen Dekutis to finish the album. We were just in the studio last night, so it was. I found some really great people. I really did.
That is really, really cool. Now, do you have any plans for the band to actually tour, or is that not really something that was in the plan?
I intend to. We'll get the album out and try to. I've already talked to booking agents and stuff, and that is definitely the plan. To tour here in the States, and I'm doing some shows, like overseas and stuff. I got a Santiago, Chile, in May 20th, and France, which is Rock versus Classic, which is kind of a singer thing, but they're letting me play stuff from my album, so it's pretty cool.
That is really cool. Again, our guest today is the original voice of Eye of the Tiger, Dave Bickler. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And we're going to throw a link to your album so people can find this and hopefully get a chance to hear the new stuff. I think it is fantastic. And again, thank you very much for visiting with us today.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine, John. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it, man.
Again, Dave Bickler, and I've got a link to all of his info and a place where you can find the album and all of the digital download versions, everything. It's right in the show notes for today at johnandheidishow.com.
The inventor of Rip It Gloves has been a drywall guy for decades. He was trying to find gloves that worked for him and his crew, but nothing was quite right. So he went out and created some. Rip It gloves fit firm in your hand and protect your hands, but still allow you to use a touchscreen. Professional athletes love the extra grip Rip It gloves gives them. Painters, roofers, contractors, but also motorcycle and horseback riders. See why everyone loves Rip It gloves at ripitgloves.com. Use promo code radio to save 25%. That's RIPIT gloves.com, promo code radio.
Fun fact for you, Heidi.
What's that, John?
Thomas Edison, known as the inventor of the light bulb, he was actually afraid of the dark. Did you know that?
I did not.
That's pretty darn cool. Now, there are people out there who say he did not invent the light bulb. He says he invented it like on the 10,000th try, but there are others that say, no, he stole that from somebody. So I'm not here to tell you what really, truly happened. I'm just telling you that it's interesting that he was afraid of the dark. That's today's fun fact on the John and Heidi Show. Credit cards, they can be trouble. About 12 years ago, we did a debt snowball program and got rid of our credit cards. We were debt-free except for our house. It was awesome. But over the course of the next decade, our credit score went down. That sounds weird, but they need open accounts to give you a score. Our lower score made our insurance rates go up. We decided to get a credit card to help with that. We just pay it off every month. If you want a better credit card, check out bettercreditcards.net. They'll help you compare all the different cards to get the best one for you. That's bettercreditcards.net. Now, fear this. Time for fun with phobias. Ancrophobia. ANCRAPHOBIA. Ancrophobia. What do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Fear of wind.
Yeah. I would have never gotten that
I don't
one.
think you would have.
Some of these are so bizarre.
They are. I don't know where they come from, but they are bizarre. Our daughter, we were on a little road trip not too long ago, and she was sharing with us the fear of long words, and it's a really long word.
It's the longest word.
I thought that was
crazy.
the funniest thing ever. I was
that
like,
was some jerk guy who was writing the
what are you afraid of, long
dictionary.
words?
I got a word for you.
All right. Thanks for listening to our fun with phobias.
Join us for a fun week in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic for the 3rd annual 80s in the Sand. We've been there the last 2 years. In addition to making a bunch of awesome new friends, we had so much fun meeting 80s actors and musicians. 80s in the Sand takes over the entire resort, so you'll mingle with them at the pools and the restaurants too. We'd love to have you join us. See the amazing lineup featuring Sammy Hagar and many more at radiotravelgroup.com. Save $200 per person for first-time guests at radiotravelgroup.com.
Now, some weird news brought to you by WeirdGiftOfTheDay.com. A woman and her son were arrested at a Walmart in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, after police say the woman practiced karate moves in the parking lot. The son was naked inside the store, and there was a dog that belonged to them that was roaming free. 46-year-old Lisa Smith and 25-year-old Benny Van were both arrested after officers learned Smith came into the Walmart, then unleashed the dog, Bo. While Bo ran up to customers, Smith erratically started pulling apart store displays and placing them in her cart. When she was asked to leave by the staff, she began to perform karate moves in the parking lot. In the meantime, Bo got a box of Jiffy cornbread muffin mix, tried to leave the store. Smith was arrested, fought with officers, also attempted to kick out a window of the squad car. Meanwhile, police say Van removed his clothing in the back of the store, exposing himself to customers. He was riding on a scooter and allegedly refused to stop when approached by police, at one point attempting to run over an officer with the scooter. When he did stop, he was also arrested. Here's the crazy thing. I had about 7 people share this story with me on Facebook, and one of them said, hey, this made me think of you. Hopefully it made you think of me because I do weird stories, not because you thought I would do that. That is definitely today's weird news. Now, your moment of duh, brought to you by FunkyMonkeyShirts.com. Incensed that a St. Louis hamburger joint ran out of chocolate ice cream, a female suspect went on a 2:25 a.m. rampage. Broke out the restaurant's windows with a baseball bat, spit on employees. Officials are seeking the public's help in identifying the woman who trashed the rally's hamburger outlet. This happened on March the 27th in St. Louis. They say the incident is a burglary and listed 3 women as victims. Police say the suspect became enraged after ordering her food, then used an aluminum baseball bat to break the glass windows of the business. And then she threatened victims as well. Investigators say the woman went ballistic after rally workers informed her that we only have vanilla at this time. Upon learning that there was no chocolate ice cream in stock, she spit on the employee and then went and grabbed her baseball bat and went to town on the windows. So, bad idea. It's a terrible idea. That's why it's today's moment of duh.
Do you have a credit card? Is it the very best credit card? Many people get their credit card as a response to an offer that was mailed to you. These are typically not the best cards. Check the fine print for the fees and interest. We have a website that compares many different cards being offered so you can find the one that's the best fit for you. If you'd like to find a better credit card, we'd love to help at bettercreditcards.net. There's no obligation. Just click and compare to see if we can get you a better credit card at bettercreditcards.net.
Now, these 3 things, Heidi, tell me, what do these 3 things have in common? Matchbooks, magazines, and beds. What do they all have in common? Matchbooks?
Fire.
Magazines? And beds. Don't really know. No. What would be on fire? The covers? Oh, that's what they all have in common. Matchbook covers, magazine covers, and beds have covers.
I don't know. There's a lot of heat in the bedroom. And depending on what magazine you're reading, just saying, I'm not wrong.
I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I will say you're not right. This is today's episode of These 3 Things. This portion of the John and Heidi Show is brought to you by the John and Heidi Show. That sounds kind of funny, but it's true. Go to your local radio station and ask them to start carrying the John and Heidi Show. Here's the best part. They can carry the show for free. They play a couple commercials, but it doesn't cost them anything every month. So if you know a radio station that could use a little bit of help, send them our way. Send them to johnandheidishow.com. Again, johnandheidishow.com. We would love to do a radio program in your community. Then you could listen to the podcast and listen to us on the radio.
John and Heidi.
We always like to wrap things up around here with good news, and I think this is good news. It comes your way courtesy of radiotravelgroup.com. And I cannot believe this. I'm looking at my calendar here. Can you believe it's next weekend?
I'm so excited.
How is that possible? Next weekend is the Vegas trip. All of the details at radiotravelgroup.com. Here's the headline. Canadian woman finally meets her Australian pen pal after 60 years
How great
of friendship.
Is that?
6 decades after the first letter was sent from the Pacific Ocean, or from one side of the Pacific Ocean to the other, Bailey and Lynn Carpenter finally met in person. When I first read that, I thought it said in prison. In person. what
are the odds?
What kind of pen pal is this? Lynn, who lives in Australia, first wrote Dolores, who lives in British Columbia, Canada, in 1960. They were both 10 years old at the time. They became fast friends, sharing interest in music and hobbies throughout their adolescence and adulthood. Their physical letters transformed through the years into emails, then text messages and phone calls. They continued to share milestones. Well, earlier this month, Dolores decided to go on a bucket list trip to Australia to meet Lynn. She is the friend who I've had the longest. 60 years is pretty darn special, Lynn said. I think that's really cool. We just recently got to go hang out with a friend of my beautiful bride, Heidi, here. How long have you and Georgina known each other?
I would say we started writing when I was about 10.
60 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just kidding.
I was in a group called International Pen Friends, and I started writing this
How many pen pals did you have?
3.
3, okay.
And I have met all 3,
And
actually.
the thing that's neat, I've met 2 of the 3. I didn't meet the third one, but I met 2 of the 3. And still lifelong friends. Are you friends with the third one too, or just the other 2?
I haven't spoken to him for a while.
Long time. So
yeah,
but it is really neat. And nowadays, kids probably don't understand why they call them pen pals. But there was a pen involved back in the day, and they used that to write letters. Nowadays, it's just Facebook friends. But it's a cool story. I love this one. I've got a link to it in the good news section of our show notes for today. You'll find that at johnandheidishow.com. Time to say goodbye, Heidi.
Goodbye, Heidi.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to the John and Heidi Show on a Wednesday.